Okay, so before starting jQuery, do you have any question regarding JavaScript anywhere in the JavaScript that we have covered throughout last week or so? If you have, let me know. Otherwise, we can start talking about jQuery. Okay, so I think we are good. No questions. So again, talking about jQuery. Of course, the motto is write less and do more. So we have seen the core part of the JavaScript, which is very good. Then there was another part of JavaScript which was more with the DOM manipulation. It has some issues, or issues not with the JavaScript, actually issues with the implementation or the varying implementation of that DOM manipulation part by different browsers. So IE has its own way of handling DOM manipulation, and then of course events are handled differently, as well as there are different methods to handle events. In case of IE, and then of course Ajax behaves differently in different browser, or I should say different objects to connect to your server using Ajax, so your different methods. For example, in case of IE versus all other modern browsers. So far, all other modern browsers like Safari, WebKit, and Firefox, or WebKit means Chrome and Safari actually. So Safari, Chrome, and Firefox, and for some extent Opera as well. I mean, they are coming up with the latest implementation or better implementation of JavaScript API throughout, from start to finish, including core as well as DOM manipulation and Ajax. They are going to, or they are already, they have they have implemented most of the ECMAScript 5 as well. Of course, ECMAScript 6 is coming down the line, probably next year or so. But IE still lags behind all of them. So now there is a differentiation between IE versus all other browsers for most of the cases. And even in case of IE 11 is good. IE 10 was good actually. The issue is with IE 8, IE 9, and below IE 8, those browsers, if they are still in use, which they are in other countries of the world, because recently XP was supported, until recently XP was supported by your Microsoft, and then of course i8 was the highest version that could be installed on XP, I think. So yeah, most of the people still use IE8. So the issue with writing JavaScript for DOM manipulation, or writing in pure JavaScript for the DOM manipulation, it's kind of a nightmarish for a developer. I mean, you can write, you can test in Chrome, it will perfectly work in Firefox, no problem there as well. But as soon as you start looking into your IE, especially IE8 and IE9, it may not be working that good, or it may be having some issues, some weird issues, everything. So for every time spending time in figuring out, okay, how to handle IE and then write a different set of JavaScript just for that browser versus all other browsers. Now, most of the time developers don't have that much time to, or UI developers don't have that much time to care about all these things. So that's why there are DOM manipulation libraries. What they do actually, they normalizes your JavaScript, different implementation of the JavaScript across the browser. So now you have same set of API that you will use provided by these libraries, and then internally they will handle these cross-browser issues, meaning let's say you are trying to attach event handler to your object. Now in case of, even if you are using IE6, IE7, you don't have to worry about whether to use attach event or whether to use add event listener, because yesterday we saw that thing, right? Difference between add event listener and attach event, which is only available in the IE6 to 8. So these libraries will handle that cross-browser issues themselves. So for the developer, there's only one normalized API for you. Even for the Ajax, they will just give you one function to you, and internally they will handle the cross-browser issue of creating the object differently, so many things. So here jQuery comes into picture because this is one of the most famous and industry standard DOM manipulation library. Not any other DOM manipulation library has been so famous than the jQuery. So again, it's not a framework, it's just a DOM manipulation library for JavaScript, that's it. And internally as well it uses JavaScript, so it's not like this is different than JavaScript. This is JavaScript, but a better wrapper around JavaScript so that you don't have to worry about cross-browser issues, and plus there are a few good stuff as well in jQuery. So of course, where to find jQuery? Anything about jQuery is of course jQuery.com. You will find, and again this is one of the most or one of the best website for any programming or any front-end technology as far as documentation is concerned. They have one of the awesome documentation team probably, so they have documented everything very well. So if you have any problem, believe on this documentation or whatever they say. They are very good in that case. So and whenever you want to see the API or you want to download a new version, some discussion, go to jQuery.com. Now it was created by John Resig, one interesting fellow. It was created in 2006 or something, and when he was just a undergrad or I think grad student somewhere in New York, probably it was in RPI or RI, I don't know, somewhere. Like this. Anyways, okay, and right now he works at Khan Academy. If you never heard about that, I mean probably it is run by Salman Khan, not the Bhai Salman Khan. It's one of the educationist, I think, academian who works for the open source teaching at Khan Academy. So of course he is the guy, and he works there, or he is the computer science or head of computer science department at Khan Academy, dean of computer science at Khan Academy. So he is very, of course, awesome guy, works for non-profit. Anyways, that's about the team or the founder who has developed jQuery. He is no longer attached to jQuery team. It is being run by a group of professionals now, and you will see there are a lot of people to contribute on this website, which is the jQuery Foundation. And then everything is open source. Whatever they do, they handle the new version, they handle different sort of things related to this jQuery open source project. So they have awesome team here as well. So now he is the president, core lead or something, and they have an entire team of people responsible for just the jQuery. And then of course, since it's open source, so you can also go and raise some ticket. I mean, they will of course listen to you. If you are very good, you can also write something, and of course you have liberty to write plugins as well, always, and just distribute it. We will talk about plugin probably just in a slide. What next? So what are the features of jQuery for us, for UI developers or who are tired of writing too much JavaScript, plain JavaScript? So of course, the important thing is it makes JavaScript cross-browser compatible. So now you don't have to write too much stuff just to make sure that it works properly in all of the browsers. Just use the API provided by jQuery, and then you should be able to, or you should not have to worry about the cross-browser issues. Of course, it's fast, it's lightweight, it is just 32 KB. The last version it was, I think it was 2.1 or something, if it is compressed. So again, 32 KB, I mean even your JavaScript will be longer than that if you are writing a mid-size application. Of course, it handles HTML DOM manipulation, CSS manipulation awesomely. Then there is support for events, effects, and animations as well, so it handles them properly. And then of course the most useful one, the Ajax. I mean, one of the reason why jQuery is most popular, because it has handled Ajax so well, and it has provided so much in the Ajax arena that, I mean, it's one of the best or one of the leading DOM manipulation library. Then there are some utility methods as well which are not available in JavaScript, and then there are some better wrappers for loops, some parse JSON function if the JSON object which is used for parsing, it is not available in the browser. It can support that one as well, some data API or some things. We'll talk about all this. And then again, as I said, it is MIT license, so everybody can use it, even the commercial systems, and thousands of contributors and open source projects. And it is one of the active project in the recent time, or the most active project in the recent time. Now again, it is a core jQuery that I'm talking about right now, and then it has some sister libraries as well, which depends on jQuery for most of their stuff. For example, they have a theming library or user interface library, jQuery UI. Using that, I mean, they have ready-made stuff that you can use. For example, all this, if you want to something for dragging, dropping, resizing, select, they have solutions for that already in them. So you don't have to write some stuff again. For example, I mean, you need some dialog box, you can just use their own version, something like this. So everything is already there. Accordion. They have these small widgets as well as interaction, like what if you want to see something dragged. So of course that is draggable as well. So they have lots of API related to user interface, and it is on the jQuery UI, and for that you have to code it requires jQuery in the system. The next one is the jQuery mobile. Another, if you want to go mobile, you want to create your website for mobiles or just for mobiles, I mean, jQuery mobile is awesome library there as well. And then of course it requires jQuery again. So you see all there were 4 to 5 libraries, and as I said, it will handle all the touch optimization or touch events for your application, or even it can normalize your application to work properly on your desktop as well as on your smartphones or touch phones or touch devices. The reason is on the desktop you have different set of inputs like clicking. So you have left click, right click, scroll, all these things, right? When you go to touch devices, you have tap, you have swipe, and then you have double tap and different things. And of course touch and hold or tap and hold, then scroll, different things. So of course you have to keep track of those events as well, which are not available in desktop. So if you are trying to create a website, let's say, which you want for the mobile users as well, which are of course mostly the touch users. Now you don't want to put 2 event handlers, one for touch, one for click. So they will virtualize all these events and give you single type of event type, which is mostly they call it the virtual event type. You just use that, and then they will take care of whether to use tap or click. So that's their own headache, and that's why jQuery mobile is also one of the better implementation for touch devices. Then they have Sizzle. We'll talk about Sizzle, which is a selector engine for CSS. So whenever you want to select something using the CSS selectors, or you want to select DOM element using CSS selectors, even jQuery uses Sizzle at the backend, and this is one of the library which even jQuery uses for its selection. So again, it's outside jQuery but still used by jQuery and depends on that. Then we have QUnit for unit testing on the JavaScript side. So of course it's a JavaScript unit testing framework, and it requires jQuery, and of course using that you can unit test your code that you are writing in the JavaScript. So that is the QUnit. So of course there are libraries, all of this, which depends on jQuery or which are related to jQuery somehow. What else? Then of course there are jQuery plugins for everything. I mean, if you are in a need to find something and you think, okay, let me just create jQuery plugin, well, Google it first. I'm sure 99% of the cases that plugin will already be there. So for every damn thing there is a plugin on jQuery, and that's why so many people or they have written these plugins for the last few years. You will have lots of thousands of plugins for jQuery now. So let's talk about how to use this in the web app. right? Web application, or how to use it, how to load it, or how to include, what are the different things that you have to take care about, different versions, different ways of loading, different things. So let's talk about how to install, or rather I should say how to include it in your web page. There is nothing called install. So the first way is to of course go to this page, which is of course jquery.com/download. There you will find links to download jQuery, which is nothing but a single JavaScript file. Now they have two versions, jQuery 1x or 2x. So the highest in 1x was what, 1.11, and they started talking about 2.x. So what is the difference between these two? So 1x, well, the major difference between 1x and 2x is 1x includes support for IE 6, 7, and 8. So if you are in a company which is still trying to support IE 8, 1x or the highest version of 1x, which is 1.11.1, you have to pick this one. Now if you don't care about 6, 7, 8, because even jQuery 2x has stopped supporting IE 6, 7, and 8, so in that one you can be using jQuery 2.x, which is their latest version. Of course 1x was dropped after 1.11, which was around a year back or something. So I mean, there of course there are all these messages saying, oh, if you are trying to support IE8, we would recommend you to go to 1x version unless you are certain that no IE6, 7, 8 users are visiting the site. It is not that they have stopped supporting it is not that the code will not run in IE8 in case of 2x, but of course they have stopped supporting it, meaning they are not testing it actively on IE8. So if there is an issue, well, they can't help it. So this is the flag, and most of the libraries or framework on JavaScript have stopped supporting 6, 7, and 8 now. I mean, for the long time they have been supporting it, and probably they've come to an understanding that let's stop supporting these browsers. There is no use to spend so much hours and support these browsers. Just ask users to upgrade or use some other browser. So even that should be the case for you. In my company, mostly the minimum they have support is for IE8, and even the managers ask for IE8 at least, and probably that would change in around 6 months or so, because support for XP has been dropped from Microsoft, I think in March or something. So there is no reason to support IE8 anymore. But still, this is the difference. Now how to get it, or how to download that jQuery file. So there are two versions. The one is compressed, the other one is uncompressed. So if you go to uncompressed, of course you see better code hinting, and then lots of spaces, everything is well explained, comments, everything, right? So this is the jQuery that you can even look into the source code. Now if you understand, this source code is one of the awesome place to find out few of the best practices in JavaScript, and you will learn so many things. I have gone through this source code so many times, so I at least understand few of the stuff. Not all of them, but yeah, at least 70% of the stuff what they are doing. Now if you don't worry about that, because of course the size of this file will be much more than its minified version. So of course for the production they say use the compressed version, which is minified, small size, and then of course you see there are not so much white spaces. If you just open it in the Chrome or somewhere as a JavaScript file, not as HTML that you are seeing here, it will be probably just 2-3 lines, but yeah, very long 2-3 lines. So even this is very short, very small in size, and of course it is compressed as well. So of course they recommend you to use production one. So in any case, whether you're using 1x or 2x, you can choose whatever you want. Of course for production you don't care about having spaces and everything, just use compressed version of everything, be it CSS library, be it JavaScript library, use the minified version in the production. So this is the case, you can just download it. So nothing, just this is a file, save it wherever you want, and then of course it will be saved something like jQuery 1.11.1.main.js. So you can just download something like that. That's it. Now how to include it? Well, just like any other JavaScript that you include, use script tag. and give path to that jQuery file that you have just downloaded. Whether it's uncompressed or compressed, doesn't matter. The only thing is this library has to be loaded before your JavaScript, because if you are using jQuery or if you are trying to access jQuery from your own JavaScript which you are writing or you have written, you have to load jQuery before those files. So make sure that that happens. So this is one of the way to, of course, download and include it along with all of your other JavaScripts. Now there is one better way, I would say, which is Content Delivery Network, and probably the name or the acronym may have changed. Okay, it's still Content Delivery Network. I was listening to some talk and the speaker talked about something else. Yeah, Content Distribution Network. Okay, so it's like that. Anyway, so what is this CDN thing? So of course, in most of the JavaScript library these days, you will find that, okay, they are being hosted on some servers. You don't have to download those files into your system. You can just refer to those particular servers. So in this case, they have the jQuery have their own Content Delivery Network servers, so CDN servers. You can just go and which is here. And then of course they have their own Max CDN, of course a company which handles the CDN part from or hosting from them for them. So of course you can just download or just refer to that particular file and say it's available on the internet. It will be downloaded to your or for your page in the browser, and you don't have to download it manually this way. Where is this? Yeah, this way. So of course, what are the features of having this way or of using the CDN? Well, there are features like it provides caching. So the servers or the CDN servers, they will put a higher expiry date for the caching. So the browser next time they will not go and request this jQuery file again or jQuery library again. Once it is being cached in the browser, which is implicit cache, I mean it will be used from there only. So of course you are reducing one request here, which is good, because if you provide it from your own application server, most of the times it may not be cached or they will not have the cache expiry set on this particular libraries, because your application servers or your administrator will not do that for you. So they will of course argue that, okay, we cannot set a cache on this type of file system for some reason, weird reason, I don't know. So in this case there will be a cache or expiry date set on these libraries, which will make it to which will force the browser to just pull it from their own cache, then downloading again from the CDN, which is good. Again, the next performance benefit is because of the distributed data center. So not sure about jQuery, but there are other CDNs as well, like Google CDN, Microsoft CDN.js, and JS Deliver. Forget about all these three, talk about Google CDN. So of course, most of the libraries, if you see on JavaScript side, are being hosted on Google servers, right? Like this, ajax.googleapis.com, and they have AngularJS, Dojo, ext core, jQuery, mobile, jQuery itself, UI, lots of, probably every open source JavaScript library is hosted on Google servers as well, or Google CDN. Now you can just go there. For example, this is the URL. If you want to take something else, for example some other version, of course they will say 1.11, you can just change the version there and then just pick this URL from that. Now what is the benefit of at least using Google CDN? Well, it's Google, so of course they have servers all around the world. So what is the benefit of that? Well, let's say your user is somewhere in the Taiwan, your systems or your application server is here in Virginia, somewhere on the Amazon web services or somewhere, or EC2, not sure. Now of course if users are far away from your application server location, then of course there may be some time lag between downloading the files because of the, of course, the geographical limitations. Now of course you want to reduce that time in loading all the files, right? What you can do in that case, you can of course have data centers all across the world to reduce that geographical limitation of the duration that it might take to download some files from your server. Now for most of the companies it's not feasible to have distributed data centers. So for the application part, okay, you cannot do most of the times. You will just have one dedicated server environment somewhere here in US. If your company is in US, then at least if you can do it this for some libraries like using CDN, then of course the benefit is if you use Google CDN, then Google has distributed data centers all across the world. So of course it will have at least in one major country. And then in that case, the time lag to download these libraries, which will be very, very short for any guy anywhere in the world. So that's why this is one of the benefit. Of course, it's not that much now with the high-speed internet, but still this part, the pre-caching, is very important. So of course CDN is a better way to go, but your companies may not agree on that. They have security expert and they have some not very good understanding. My company has that, so they may not have some very good understanding. So internally, if I try to access all these libraries, well, for most part they will just block the access. But another thing is, I mean, if you are trying to access something on CDN, your users have to be online, because of course this is coming from different servers. They have to be online. So again, this is one of the other reasons that you will want to provide your JavaScript jQuery library from your own path or for your own assets folder. The reason is, for example, think about mobile apps. If you are creating those and they have to be offline apps, in that case you have to put your jQuery or all other JavaScript libraries along with your all other assets on the website. So that's why this is one of the cases where you may not want, but at least for your project, just try to use CDN. It's much better to handle all the different things. And again, since it's a stable version, it will not change. So just like you have downloaded it and then stored it along with other assets, just connect to them and then use this one. And this is true for even CSS frameworks like Bootstrap. So if you go to Bootstrap, go to download Bootstrap, they will say blah blah blah, download from here, or they have their own CDN, which is again hosted by MaxCDN. Now these are the different libraries, so different files. For example, they have a minified file for CSS, theme, as well as their own JavaScript for some components. So just include these three if you're trying to use Bootstrap, or if you want to download, you can still go and download and then keep these three different files in your project. That's it, and include it in your HTML or JSP pages, whatever. Okay. So this is how you can use jQuery at least in your web app, or at least include in your web app, not use. We didn't go through that one so far. The next one is the syntax. Important thing to understand about this jQuery is, of course, the jQuery syntax. Now, entire jQuery library is just these three keywords. jQuery keyword, which will provide you the access to the jQuery library itself, because you have to call something to access jQuery, right? It's different than your JavaScript. So of course, you have to have some keyword to access jQuery. So it's jQuery keyword. Some sort of selector that we will talk about. There are lots of selectors in JavaScript, in jQuery, and you can access or you write any combination of the selectors, and you will be able to access any element or DOM element from the HTML page. Why do you need that? Well, actually, as I said, jQuery is nothing but a DOM manipulation language or DOM manipulation library for JavaScript. So anytime you want this, well, most of the times you want to refer or access certain DOM elements and then bind some events, do some CSS modifications, animations, or some different things, including Ajax. So for that, you always, in 90% of the cases, you will want to have some selectors here, and then just find out that element easily from the DOM, process it, perform some actions. So the third part is some action on that particular set of elements returned by this jQuery selector thing. So this is the almost entire jQuery that you will have, just 1 or 3 characters. This is optional. So in some cases, if there are some util functions, you will not see the selector part. But yeah, you will always be using some action, some sort of actions, and there are lots of available actions or methods or functions, whatever you call it, on this jQuery object. So we will talk about these different things now. So first one is of course the jQuery keyword. You use it to access jQuery. Now most of the times you don't use that much longer word, you just use dollar. The reason is jQuery has normalized, or jQuery will give you access to itself, or jQuery library itself, using dollar as well, because they will just it is just the aliasing. You can use either the jQuery keyword with the same thing or a dollar also. Most of the times you go with the dollar because that's easier, and that is one of the identity of the jQuery, to use dollar. Now the selector, as I said, it's a query to find HTML elements. And again, important thing is every time you do something like jQuery and pass some selector, any string having a selector combination, then of course it returns a jQuery object. So what you are doing actually here in this part, you are trying to find some HTML element, and of course it will be a jQuery object, just like here I said, and then on those objects or those HTML elements you will perform some actions. That's what you will be doing, and those actions can be like changing the CSS or event handling, different things. And then of course the last part is perform on the element. So what action you want to perform on the element, on this element written by this group, will be defined here, or you will be just using it. So the first thing is how to avoid namespace conflict. So of course this is unique to jQuery, this keyword, which is J capital Q query. So jQuery, this keyword is unique to jQuery themselves, but this dollar, well, this is not unique to jQuery. So what if you are using some other library as well, similar library like prototype? So again, don't be confused with the JavaScript prototype concept. This is prototype library, or most importantly it's called prototype JS, like this. It is again a DOM manipulation library. It came, I think, at the same time, somewhere around jQuery, but it didn't get that much traction. But still, they or someone else may also be, if you are trying to use these two libraries together in your application, there will be fight for this dollar keyword, because both of them can be used, or dollar can be used to access both of them. Now you have to figure out what to use where, right? I mean, if you are trying to use jQuery method or jQuery action, you have to you have to figure out a distinction between these two. So how to do that? Well, there are two approaches. First one is of course to use your IFI, right? So what we can do, so for example in this particular block I want to use dollar for jQuery only. So you can write this IFI thingy which we have discussed, and then pass your jQuery keyword here, and then parameter name here, take it like a dollar. Now it is safe as long as you are writing your jQuery in this part, and anything outside can of course will be using prototype. So here you can make sure that your code is without this namespace conflict, because this hide method may not be available on prototype, so it is only available on jQuery. So how to differentiate between these two libraries using the same dollar keyword? So of course you can do something like this, or there is another way which is on the jQuery.com as well, and they have some method to do some similar things for you, and which is jQuery no conflict. So again, as I say, it will relinquish jQuery's control of dollar variable, and now you can use dollar for everything else. So there are two approaches, but again, why to call us another method if you can just using your own JavaScript solution for that? So this is the best when most of the times you will not be using these libraries together. They are doing the same thing, so you will either go with jQuery or prototype for most of the part. So I have never used two such libraries together, but still if you find something like that, then you will be having namespace conflict, because both of them can be using dollar. And the reason is, so let's say on the first, you are including all these prototype libraries in your application, right, or in your index.html page. Now whoever was included last will have access to dollar. So again, I'm going here and changing my Plunker type to jQuery. So again, they have included jQuery from some other CDN. I don't know what is that. So let's say you go and then include your prototype here at this line. At that point, your dollar will be used by prototype, not by jQuery, because prototype will override that. If you use prototype up and then of course jQuery after, then your dollar will refer to your jQuery. So this is the reason, and it may depend on the flow, and then if you are using two such libraries, you have to figure out how to avoid this namespace conflict. Two methods, either to use this, and then again here I will tell you that now since we know that this dollar doesn't have to be dollar, it can be anything. We will talk about that. Or if you still want to use dollar using jQuery's own method, there is something called jQuery.noConflict, which is good. Something like, just call this before your start of the document, and then you can use dollar for other libraries like this. You can read whole documentation here as well. As I said, it is one of the well documented libraries, so you shouldn't have any problem. So what we did here, we have jQuery loaded properly here via some CDN. We have a script.js, and then in the script.js there should be some ready-made code. So let's forget about this code, run it. So we have it running something, of course. So that was about the syntax as well as how to avoid namespace conflict. Now let's talk about this. So I will just, what do I have? I have one H1 plugin, right? Not plugin actually, H1 tag. What I want to do is I want to change its color to red using one standard function on JavaScript, on jQuery. So I can do something like $.h1. We'll go through details for all of the selectors and all of the methods, or most of the methods, but still to have an example we will just go with this approach. So what we are trying to do, we are selecting H1 element here and then changing its color, or changing the CSS property color to have, I don't know, red, and you want to execute that, and then you want to see whether it is a red color or not. So right now you see, although you have applied properly, there is no error on the console, but still you don't see the effect. Something like this, you don't see any effect here, right? It's no longer red, and the reason you already know. Your script is executing before the DOM manipulation, or before the DOM parsing, or before even your DOM is ready. So what is the best way to include it at the bottom of your body, not your body, HTML's body. So of course you can have it, and then of course everything will work as you have set it to work. Now it is available. So this is the function that will be, or action that we'll be using throughout, at least until we reach to the action slides. So what we are doing, we will pick anything, we will figure out any element from using some selector, and then we will apply CSS color red. Most of the times we will be doing just this. Now let's talk about the few different things, especially in the JavaScript, not with the jQuery. They are basic JavaScript things. So the first one is of course the load event. So in JavaScript, whenever you load, not in JavaScript, whenever you load your page for the first time, there are two different events that occurs, and we will be able to see those events. So the first event, or one of the event, is load event, which triggers when the entire page has been loaded. So if you write your code like this, it will be executed when the page is rendered, and at that time, as I said, or before even your page is rendered, depending on the location of the script tag. Now in that time your DOM may not be available. So that is what was happened before, and there was no effect of the code that you have written, because at that time H1 wasn't available in the DOM. So of course it didn't even do the rate thing here. So that is the load event. And again, one of the important thing about load event is, well, it is not triggered until all the assets are loaded to the document, including images, subframes, everything. So this is the load event. So it will wait for all the images to be loaded properly, all the subframes, if there are multiple frames, everything which is coming from outside world, it will wait for all of them to be loaded properly in the document, and then only it will fire the load event, right? Most of the times you don't want to wait for that. The reason is, for example, you go to, let me give you an example of this event and how or where you can see it in your CDT. So just open your network or CDT, go to network, and then here refresh the page after cleaning. So you will refresh the page, you will find out two distinct lines in this CDT. The one is the blue one, which says DOM content loaded event. The red one is, of course, the load event. If you scroll to the top, you will find out that your load event is always after the DOM content loaded event. Now this DOM content loaded event, which is the next set of next event actually, it doesn't wait for all of the things to be loaded. It waits only until the document has been completely loaded and passed. That's it. And that's why the DOM keyword here, DOM content loaded. So as you can break out this word into two different things and just say, okay, it will trigger whenever the DOM content has been loaded, right? So what is the DOM content? Well, your HTML page, that's it. And as soon as it is loaded, or you can see some other website as well. So as soon as this is loaded into the memory and then passed by the browsers, it doesn't wait for anything else. So if you scroll up, so you see that you have blue line and now you have red one as well. Red one is for your all of the assets to be loaded, including images. So if you see here, you will always have this DOM content loaded event fire before your load event, because it just have to wait for this HTML file. That's it. And whenever it is passed, it will execute it. But your RAID or the load event, well, it waits for everything on this page to be loaded. So that is the problem. So you don't want most of the times to wait for that long. You can execute your JavaScript as soon as your DOM is ready, because in 99% of cases you are just dealing with the DOM manipulation, right? So that's why you should always execute your JavaScript on DOM content loaded event and not to wait for load event. The only time you have to wait for load event is, well, when your JavaScript is dealing with these images, it wants to change some images or something like that, so you have to wait for those images to properly load, and then only you can fire some JavaScript code for those particular things. Otherwise, in most of the cases, you are pretty good with just waiting for DOM content loaded event to fire. Just execute your JavaScript. Now the thing is how a developer can sorry, access that time, or how can you bind your code, your event handlers for these two particular events. So of course, again, the issue with DOM content loader is it is IE9 and higher. For IE9 and less, there is something called ready state change. So again, we have some issue with the cross-browser compatibility as far as JavaScript is concerned for this particular event. So again, if you write by yourself, you will be attaching event handler for on ready state change for I less than IE9, or for all other, you will be using add event listener to bind an event for DOM content loaded event, and that would be on IE9 and higher or all of the modern browsers. So JavaScript said, okay, forget it. Sorry, jQuery said, forget it. And then it just has normalized both of these events, ready state change or DOM content loaded, and into it one name called ready. That's it. You pass your document or any object here, and then what you are asking here is, whenever this document is ready, document means your own document, right? We saw the window.document. This is the document object, or representing your HTML doc. Now whenever this is ready, execute this function. That's what you are saying. So that's how you can wait for only the DOM content loaded to fire and then execute it only after that. So this is a very good solution, and it has normalized the ready function, which is jQuery. It has nothing to do with these events. But when you call this function internally, it will pass, or it will put an event handler for these two events depending on the browser, and then it will execute your function, whatever you have set here. So this is the handler, and that's how you are just setting it, and your browser will call it whenever these events are fired. And there is similar for load event as well, which is window.load. So you can do that one as well if you are trying to track the load event, not the DOM content loaded event. So these two are different events in JavaScript, and if you don't use jQuery, then you have to be worried about having different events and binding two different events, for one for i9 and higher, other for i9 and less. So in that case, jQuery will help you here. So let's see the use of this. So let's put it again on the head. So of course, it will not be possible to execute like this because your code has been executed before the DOM was ready. You want to wait for the DOM to be ready, right? So what you should do, we can just use something like this. Pass document there, call ready, and then pass an event handler into this. So it's nothing but just a function, and then you can put this guy inside. Now it is sure that whenever you use this block, whatever you write inside will be executed only after the DOM is ready. And that's why even though script is in the head section, it is waiting for this DOM to be ready, and of course will execute only after the DOM is ready. That means h1 is available in your DOM, and then of course you can apply anything on that h1 in this particular example. So this is your starting function that you should be having in case of if you want to wait only for the DOM content loaded event and not for load or for just plain execution. So this is where you can use this document.ready. And again, ready is not an event. It is jQuery's function to normalize this issue with DOM content loaded event or ready state change event, which are of course really the events like the onLoad event. But again, this may be too much to write, so they have short version here, the concise version, which is just like this. So instead of using all this different, you can just put $ and your function inside, and this is an alias kind of thing to this document.ready. So mostly you will find people using this, which is also fine. So just get rid of this part, and it is also the same thing, or kind of other way to write document.ready. So if you have something like this, meaning $, and a function inside, that means it is nothing but just document.ready. Okay, so this is of course the way to wait for any of this event like DOM content loaded or ready state change and execute your code after that. So in this case, even if you put your scripts in the head section, that's fine, but again, why to stop or block rendering until then when your files are being loaded? Just put it at the last, and of course you don't have to worry about this part. Any doubt? Okay, so let's move on. Now, as I said, when you do jQuery in some selector, you are referencing the document or the DOM element, but what you get in return is a jQuery object. Now for some time you may not want the jQuery object, you want the real DOM element, the native DOM element, just like you get it from document.getElement by ID, get elements by tag name, or get elements by name, those methods. But here the things are different. So let's first figure out what is this jQuery object being returned to us, and is it any different from your DOM element, which is very basic native one. So this is the object that we have. So what we will do, we will just log it. So we have this object right now. You can see I have logged it. Or if it looks complex to you because it is nothing but jQuery function, I'm just gonna say log. So here it will show you some array-like thing, and then if you expand that, it is kind of an array because it has 0 and it has length property, but there are some other objects as well, so it's not entirely an array. Alright, if you put 2 more here or 3 more h1s with of course different text, then you will see that the selector, this guy, will be able to reference all of 3 together, and it will return you an array having all of this 3. Now of course, I mean, this is normal array, 0, 1, 2 indexes and their values, and then it has length properties. So we are good with array for these things, but there are other properties as well, like context, previous object, selector. So of course it is not entirely your native array, because if you print your native array, it will be something like this. So if you print like this, your native array, JavaScript array, will have your indexes and length property. That's it. And of course the prototype, right? And again, your prototype will go to array, not to object. So this JavaScript thing or JavaScript array is just like this, the native array. Although this jQuery object looks like an array, it has some of the properties of array like indexes and then of course the length, but it is not exactly the array. So that's why people call it array-like wrapper. Array-like because it is looking like an array, but of course not the native array. So what is this jQuery object doing here? So let's go back to that. So you see we have 3 elements, and they are representing these 3 items, 3 h1s. And if you see, if you expand this, they are nothing but the DOM elements itself, just like what we saw yesterday, right? So here is the element, here is the DOM element again, the next one, the h1, and then here is the last h1, right? And they are nothing but the DOM elements. Now if you try to access DOM element via this, well, this guy will be returning you a jQuery element. We just saw that, right? If you want to access DOM element from here, because let's say you want to execute your DOM API for some reason, like document.getElementById, which is done by here, you get a reference to the element, and then you want to do something like, if that is an element dot, I don't know, add event listener, which is native JavaScript method. Well, you cannot apply that on the jQuery or jQuery element. Something like this. So of course when you try to do that, you will be having errors saying uncaught undefined is not a function. The reason is this is a jQuery object. It doesn't have these methods. The add event listener or whatever we have discussed in JavaScript belongs to document or the DOM element, not the jQuery element. So how to access DOM element from your jQuery object? Well, you can access via array, right? Because you can have this array, and then let's say I want to access the first element, first DOM element, which is at 0 location. Just pass something like this, and here you are referring to that specific DOM elements which is available at the index position 0. Let's just print it again, and you will see that if you open this guy at the 0 location, then of course it is nothing but a DOM element itself. And if it is a DOM element, then of course you will be having access to add event listeners and everything. which are pure JavaScript functions. So for that, of course, you have to get that element from this array. Now I am just getting the first one. So if I click on the first one now, of course I will get that message hi on the console, because I have, or what I did here, I did bind the event handler for click event with using the native DOM API. So of course, if you want to get DOM element from the jQuery object, you have to go through that array like thing. So this is what I have been talking here. So to get a reference to the actual DOM elements instead of the jQuery object, use either this method, which is nothing but getting an element from the array depending on the index that you want, which is equivalent to, in this case, document.getElement by ID, because we will talk about this hash a little later. And the next one, or the other solution, is to use the jQuery method called get and then pass your index. Well, when you already have some JavaScript solution, why go and use another method? Another one method calls, of course, it will be slower than this approach, which is pure JavaScript. So this is a way where or how you can get a native DOM element from the jQuery object. For some reason, if you want to execute DOM API, native DOM API, you can just extract the DOM element from the jQuery object and write your code using the DOM API or any plain JavaScript, pure JavaScript. So this is how you can do that. Another thing, well, the similar thing is, if you get something like, so let's get rid of this, and we were doing something like this right before, and we are asking jQuery to find out the h1 elements and then change the color to red for all of them. So you see all of them are red. And now this CSS is not a DOM API function, it is a jQuery function or jQuery action. It is of course not available in DOM API. Now if you try to use something like document.getElement by ID, or in this case get elements by tag name, because you are trying to find out all h1 elements, so it's a tag. Now if you try to apply jQuery functions on this, similar to this, well, that's not possible. The reason is the CSS is a jQuery function and can only be applied on a jQuery object, not on some DOM element, because when you do document.getElement by tag names or anything like that, you are getting an element which is in the native JavaScript. So in that case, you will also see the same error. If you do, let's ignore this. So of course, this is the error. Now you have the DOM element, native DOM element, and then you want to use it along with the jQuery functions. So how to convert this native DOM element into jQuery element or jQuery object so that you can access or you can perform some jQuery actions. So for that, easy solution, just wrap it around jQuery selector. That's it. So what we did, we put that jQuery document or DOM element inside the jQuery selector, and now this is a proper jQuery object and you can execute any jQuery function on that. So both ways, we got to know how to get a DOM element from the jQuery object, and with this approach we know how to convert or how to wrap the jQuery object or get jQuery object from the DOM element. So both ways you can do that. And the reason is just because your jQuery functions can operate only on the jQuery object and not on the DOM elements, and reverse is also true. Okay, another thing is your jQuery is a fail-safe kind of a library, meaning so you try to select h1 elements from your page, and of course in this case there were 3 h1 elements, so it's selected, so of course it has written something not null or undefined, and then you have applied CSS on that. Good. Right now we just have 3 h1s, right? Nothing else, and some scripts of course. Let's try to find out one div element. So right now there is no div element in our document, right? If you try to do similarly within using the DOM API, it will throw you exception saying cannot apply CSS or whatever function on the undefined, because if it doesn't find anything in your document, well, of course it will set to undefined in case of your DOM API, document.getElementById or all different things. Now in case of jQuery, well, it's not failing here, so it will just ignore if it doesn't find any element that you have asked for in the document. So that's why it is fail safe. But then again, the problem is, well, you don't know at this time whether there is some element present or any div element present in the document or not. So if you have to figure that out, well, there is one method for that one as well, and we have already seen this. So let's log what we have in case when it can't find a div element in the document. So in this case, of course, there is no div elements. Let's expand it. You will see the length is 0, which makes sense. All other things, all other properties are, of course, the jQuery related, but this length, it determines how many number of elements are available for that particular selector in the document. So here length is 0, so we can just use this length property to check whether there exists some item or not for that particular selector. So that's what it is mentioned here. You can use the length property of the jQuery object, and if it returns any non-zero value, then of course it does exist. If it does not return anything, or if its value is 0, that means it does not exist. Simply, you don't have to compare, because again, anything greater than 0 will of course be evaluated to true, and you already know that 0 will be evaluated to false. So you can just use this type of thing to figure out whether any div element is available in the document or not. So of course, to check whether the selector element exists in DOM, you can use this approach. Any questions? Okay, and of course it's a fail, or jQuery functions are fail-safe. Even if selector returns no elements, well, they will be just ignored, plainly ignored, like in this case. Not saying you some exception or returning you some exception saying, well, we couldn't find anything, it's undefined, you cannot apply this. So you don't have to worry about whether this is available in the document or not. So let's have a break for 10 minutes or so, and then when we come back at 7:50, we will start talking about selectors. So jQuery was interesting until this slide, the previous slide. Now it's one of the most boring thing to teach, because there are nothing other than selectors and actions, and that's it. The interesting part is Ajax, but that's far away from now. But still, it is the boring, or the boredom starts now, so still bear with me. Because what I can do about teaching jQuery is just saying you, okay, these are the functions, and that's how you can use it. Now it's on the developer or your requirement what functions to use. There are no concepts as of now, just like we had in the JavaScript, because you have to understand the concept, basic concepts. Here they are just plain methods. Just use them as per your requirement. That's it. So yeah, we'll start talk about when we come back at 7:50 after the break. Okay. The question is, can we give exception? Meaning what? Exception from where? Okay, first of all, you don't want your JavaScript to throw exception at any point in your production code. The reason being, this is executing on the user's end. If something goes wrong in the JavaScript, it will stop executing at that particular line. Forget about anything after that. And then of course your application will not work in most cases, and there will be some exception here. So you should not throw exceptions just widely from your app, because it's not on your system or server side that you can handle it properly or something like that. If you want to anyway think about exception, then of course you can use try catch, or if you want to throw exception manually, then you can do something like, if dot length is of course not there, throw, what was that, throw something, throw, okay, just throw the exception. In that case, of course, you have to keep it inside. Or try catch block, and then you have to have the catch block to handle this throw. But I don't see the logic of having this logic, having this code. Most of the times you just want to print some message saying, well, this is not available or something like that. So of course, just check like this and then provide a suitable message here on the page or anywhere else. Okay, so let's start with the selectors now. So just like we had selectors in case of CSS, we have different sort of selectors, right? Ancestor descendants, the attribute selectors, different selectors, even pseudo selectors there, right? Why we were using selectors in CSS? Well, to select some items from the HTML and then apply some styling on those particular items or those particular elements. So here as well in jQuery, we have lots of selectors that we can use, and then using these selectors, they will be returned to us in form a jQuery object, and then later on we can apply some actions on those elements. So we will have I have some few slides with the selectors, probably 6 or 7 different types of selectors that we have, and then again a link here which will bring you to this page, the jQuery part of that particular category of selectors. And then of course I am not covering all of the selectors, but still I will go through the major ones. But if you want to go through that one, for each category I have linked. So for example, in the next category, which is attribute, I have linked an attribute page here that will have all the attribute selector functions. And as I said, this is very good as far as documentation is concerned. So you can go and click on this, any of the link that I have, or even on this page on api.jquery.com, go there, and then you will have an entire example, and then of course the entire descriptions or proper description for everything. So, and some cautions, I mean everything related to that particular action, selector, any such thing. So let's start talking about selectors now. So what are the ways using which we can select some element from the DOM, and later on, probably tomorrow, we will talk about actions. So the first one is of course the universal selector. So if you try to pass something like this, then you are saying, okay, select everything from the page. Since you have passed that, it is similar to your CSS universal selector wildcard. So here what we are doing, this is the selector which will return us all of the element. Then we are saying, okay, change the color to blue. That's what we are doing. Now what I did in the meantime, in the break, I created this small DOM tree or DOM or document, which is nothing but some div, some li elements, 2 inputs, one is enabled, other is disabled, some para with the ID here, some para with the name, some another div with the class, some few more things, some links, and some button, just to have an example of all the different type of selectors and what it will return if we use on this document depending on the condition. So the first one is of course the universal selector, and we are saying select all the elements and then change the color to blue, or to red to be precise. So of course everything is red now. Even if you type something here, it will be red. The reason, you have applied universal selector. So that's very easy. Rarely used, should never be used, because as I said, I mean, as you will go here and find out, of course it's very slow because now you are asking for everything. Extremely slow except when used by itself. Used by itself means except when jQuery uses it for itself. Otherwise it's very, very slow. Now this is the basic one, then you probably that you will never be using it. But again, the next one is of course the dot class flavor that we have already seen similar in CSS as well. But here of course it will return you jQuery object for all those elements. And now if you wanted to select anything by its class, just use dot, and then it will select all the elements with the given CSS class. So for example, in this case, you are asking jQuery to return you an object after selecting all the elements having a class outer. In this case, this is not a space in between, right? So dot outer dot another. So here you are asking select all the elements with which is having both of these classes, outer as well as another, because there is no space in between. So again, remember, whenever you combine two different selectors without a space, you are saying they are both together on the same element. Let me give you an example. So before that, I mean, do we have some class here? Yep. So we have this inner class attribute on some div. So let's just use this class selector, and then we have only the part inside that div is now red, which is just 2 paragraphs. That's it. Nothing else, right? So that part is red, of course. Now I was talking about having two different things, right? So let's see, let's put someone else with the class inner. This para for some reason. So now this is also inner class having, so of course it is red, and this is red as well. Now I want to be specific and I want to give one more class. Now I want to select only that element which is having inner class as well as extra class, like this, not just having inner. So in that case what you can do is you can just pass extra without any space. In that case only that one will be selected. If you put space, that's a different story. If you put comma, then you are saying, okay, give me inner as well as extra. So that's what you are having here. But if you don't put anything in between, then you are asking for specifically particular DOM element which is having inner class as well as extra class onto the same element, and that's why you see only the first para is being selected, because it does have both of the classes together. So again, this is the example for this one. Next one, of course, just like your CSS, you have access to element selectors as well. You don't have to provide any class or any IDs or anything, just provide the name or the tag name of the element like this, and then it will give you all of them. I think we have already seen that. Let's just change span, the color of the span, wherever we have it, to red. So of course we have just one span. I think yep, here, that's it, and that's why we see the color only apply to that one, because it's an element selector. So it's like a parent child. Well, we'll talk about the hierarchy selector. There was a question from someone. So here selecting just based on the element type. So that's very easy, again, element, and it will select all the elements with the given tag name. What else? Then of course you have for the ID as well. And so whenever you use ID, this is the easiest one. You just pass the ID with the prefix hash, and then it will try to find out that item using that ID. So do we have anything with the ID? Yep, we do. This p tag with the ID myp. So we can have it here, prefix via hyphen, not hyphen, hash, and then of course you can select one. And just like in your CSS ID selector, this guy will always return only one element. So even if you have multiple with this, let's say, which is of course not a proper DOM element, but still, like same two places, same ID, of course it will return you the first one. So always try to have a unique ID per document. Your ID should be unique for your document, otherwise you will be thinking why it is not being selected. I have asked for ID selector. Well, the reason is there will be some other ID with the same name, and then your page is selecting that one. Okay, so that was your ID. Now let this comma thing, right, which I have already talked about. So you can combine any selectors, I mean not just this selector or even whatever we covered later on, via a comma, and what you are saying is return me the combined result or a union of this specific selectors. So that's why you will getting all those or collection of elements satisfying selector 1 or satisfying selector 2 or selector 3, and that's a union or combined result of all of this. So here what I am saying is, okay, just give me all the elements having outer class, or if they are div, or if there is an ID first div, and here it will give you combination or combined result of all of them. I have a few questions. What is, I have two elements with the same ID, which I need to change? Of course anyone. Just make sure that you have one ID per document. So again, for example, this, it will give you the union of all the selectors. So for example, I want to select for the one that I have already given before, like this. So what I said here, give me something which has inner class or extra class then of course all of were selected, or something like span. Okay, span is also there. Some li, so there are few li's, so you can do all of them together, and then it will return you the combined result of all of these selectors, individual selectors. That's why you use comma, for having a union of selectors. Okay, there were some questions regarding this. I think those should be clear now. So does inner comma extra has the same behavior as inner? Well, not. It is a union. The only reason why it's having same behavior in our example is because this guy is having inner as well as here as well. So if I remove this and just have like this, then also it will work, because I'm asking for either inner or extra class. So this will be picked up from the extra class selector, and this will be picked up from inner class selector. Okay, so these are a few of the basic selectors, and then of course you can go to basic, and then you will find out class, element ID, multiple selector. Okay, so I have covered everything from this page here with examples. Now let's talk about the attribute selector. Again, you can go there and there will be lots of attribute selectors. I won't cover everything, but yeah, few important ones. The first one is the attribute itself. So what if you want to select an item or element by its attribute, not by its ID, not by its class, not by its tag name, but by its ID, not ID, the attribute. In that case, you have to put this braces or bracket, the square bracket, and then of course you can, if you do something like this, you are saying, okay, select all the elements with specified attribute with any value. Here you are not specifying any value, so we are just asking for the attribute. So for example, you want to select something with a name, right? Name is of course not an ID, not a class, or not div as well. So you want to select all the elements having myPara as the name. Well, before that, having just a name attribute somewhere. Let's put name here as well, not here actually, here. This is input 2. Of course, never have your input names like this, but just for example. So what you want here, you want to select all the elements having an attribute name. So that's what you will do. And you see this name surrounded by the square brackets. You are saying, okay, give me all the elements having an attribute name. So that's why you see this, and this one as well is red, and then of course the para with the name myPara. You don't care about value as of now, you're just asking for the attribute. So this is what you will get. What about the value as well? If you want to check for a specific value, well, in that case just pass equals to and then value inside the as a string. So I think if this guy has name attribute value as myPara, so I'm gonna just pass it like this, name equals to myPara. And now we are specifically asking for an element having name equals to myPara. So of course these were input 1, input 2, so they were not selected, only this guy was selected because it is matching the name and value condition. What else? Then of course there is not equals to as well. So you can say something like, okay, select all elements with either not having this attribute, or if they have the attribute then the value is not this, both ways. So we can do something like this as well. What we are saying, select all of them which are not having, well, everybody is in that range. Do we have something else? So let's just since everybody is here, and because it is kind of applying to everything, what we can do is we can just use on P only, and in that case when you want to combine or you want to get the intersection of two selectors, just combine them without space. That's it. If you put space, that's a different story. If you put comma, then that's a union, and if you put without space here, then of course it's an intersection. We just saw that with the classes as well, right? Dot inner, dot extra, there was an intersection, meaning give me that element which is a P element as well as it has a name in this case not name, and if it does have name then not equals to my para. So here it has selected all the P except the one which is having name equals to my para, because that's what you are asked here. So again, this is also one of the way, and you will be using this way most of the times. So here as well, you are asking for all the div elements either not having name attribute, or if they are having name attribute, then value is not equals to my div. What else? Then of course you can have star as well, and there are a few more. So if you have star, then you are saying, okay, find out any, in this case, any element which is having an attribute value. Okay, let me give the example which is better. So what we are saying here? We are saying find all the P elements which are having name, right? Name equals to my para, or just have something like this: my input 1 and my input 2, something like this. So what we want actually is to select all of the elements having my string inside their name somewhere, anywhere. Since this is a start, it doesn't have to be inside. So you see your para is selected because it has a my keyword. That's because that's what you asked inside the name of that one, and even this too, because you have changed them to my input 1, my input 2. And again, my can be anywhere, so it doesn't have to be at the start. It can be in between as well, something like this. And then also it will be selected because it's a string or it's a substring, but you're asking for a substring that can be anywhere in the page, or anywhere in the attribute value actually, not the page. So that this is the one. What if you want to just have on the front or on the back that particular string? So of course there are something like this $, that means select elements which have the specified attribute with the value ending exactly with the given string, or there is something called the star as well. So there is two other as well, you will find out those things. So you can go through all others as well. Yeah, just nothing. So for example, in this case I want to select anything which have the name attribute starting with the my, not at the end or in between. In that case, just use the caret, and then only those words are selected, not this. And then again, if you don't use spaces in between, then you are asking for not combine actually, that matches all the filters, or in this case all the selectors. So it's kind of intersection. So give me element which is satisfying this selector as well as this selector. So it has to satisfy both of the selector, kind of a intersection. So yeah, you can do something like this as well. Okay, let's talk about hierarchical selectors now. And again, there are a few more. Probably I would have covered everything. So hierarchical selector. So again, you have the parent-child selector and ancestor-descendant selector. And just like in CSS that we have gone through, they have the same meaning, but of course in this case they will return you the elements itself. So here you are saying, okay, select all the direct child element in a specified parent element. Or in this example we are saying select all the elements with the class outer which are direct children of a div. So that's what you are saying. This is the direct relationship. So of course only one level difference. So we can do something like do we have some other span? Let's put some other span here. So we have this span here and then one span here as well. Now we want to select only that span whose immediate parent, or of course parents are always immediate or not. Parent is an li tag. So only we want to select only this using the parent-child relationship. So we can ask it here something like li and then span. So of course we are saying only that one, not everything else. So of course we can do that one, or one more thing, or the better way, we can do something like put it inside like this. So now this span has parent P, this span has parent Li. You are asking for the only one which is having Li as its parent, so of course it was selected. What about the ancestor descendant? Well, in this case there is no condition on the depth of this relationship, so ancestor can be anywhere in the DOM tree, and then descendant can be in that particular DOM tree as well at any level. So here you are saying if you put space, that means it is an ancestor descendant relationship that you are asking for. So here you are asking select all the all the elements with the class outer which are having a div as an ancestor. So in our case, what you can do is so the distance between this doesn't matter as of now, as you are using this. So what I'm gonna do, I will just say something like select all the span which are inside UL elements. Of course there is only one. So of course what I'm saying is even if there are multiple span like this, which is not a good DOM tree, but still same, just for the sake of example, this is outside any Li, and this is 2 levels down, this is 1 level down than UL, but still you will be able to select both of them. Again, reminding you, this is not a good DOM structure. The only thing that should be inside UL is Li tag or RLI tags. So, but that is your ancestor descendant relationship. So how it is different than this direct? Of course, this is direct, and in both cases you are asking for descendant or child only. You will be not returned ancestor or parent in these cases. What else? Then there is something called sibling selector. So here you are asking for return me all the, here let's say this, select all the P elements with the class outer. So you have combined one selector here, and then saying return me all the P elements with the class outer which or where a div precedes this guy. So in our system, select that particular div where a P is preceding that P, right? Because we have only 2 divs, and of course there is no P preceding this div, so only this one is being preceded by a P. And of course they have to be, or let's have this, select that particular P element preceded by an input element like this. So we will do something, input is the predecessor and then you have P element. So of course there is only one where you see the input is preceding that particular P, so it will return you like that. And since we have 2 inputs, so let's select only that input which is having preceded by some span, so we can do that one as well. And then only one of this input will be, because span is preceding this input, not this one. So this is a sibling selector. What else? Yep. Then of course you can have all the child selectors. So we have this hierarchy, right? Something similar to what we have seen in case of CSS. The first child, the last child, the nth child, same thing here as well. So here we are asking, okay, give me the first child of its parent. So for example, if I want to select the Li, the first Li, then of course what I can do here is, first of all I can do something like this, and then it will be selecting all the Li elements, right? Because all have immediate or all have parent as UL, but I want just the first one. So you can do pseudo selector type of thing, first child, and then only first will be selected. If you do the last child, only the last will be selected. And of course, as you remember, we have nth child as well, and there we can pass any number from first to last in between, or even first as well, doesn't matter. So let's say 1, so it will select the 1, 2, for whatever you want, like this. So of course we can do this one, or we can have even. So all the evens will be selected, or odd, they will be selected. Or of course the same way you can have 2n plus 1, which is odd. So the same thing, you can have the same thing, arithmetic progression here as well. So just like we have in the CSS, you have the similar set of selectors here, and then what you are doing here, you are selecting all those elements and applying some action on that, which is in this case just a CSS property changing color to red. That's it. So that's first child, last child, nth child. We have already covered everything. So any doubt in this? Okay. So let's talk about some of the form selector, because most of the times you will be looking for the form selectors, like selecting inputs depending on various states. So we will talk about those now. So for example, if you want to just select all the checked elements, so just use this. If you want to select all the selected elements like a select box or drop down, just use something like this. So again, we can do something like we don't have checked. Okay, we can have select. And we want to take the selected one. So of course you can do something like option dot selected not dot selected, the one which like this. And then of course if you go there, since one is selected already, it is red. If you make two the selected one, then of course one will be only the one which is red. The reason is when this code was executed, the first one was already selected. If you want to make the other one selected at the page load, you have to just put this attribute like this. Then of course default 2 is selected, and you will see 2 is red. So yeah, that can be done with the checkboxes, which will work on the ready buttons. So that can also be done there. Now again, one thing to remember, whenever you are using this type of pseudo selectors, always try to be more precise or be more specific what type of element that you want, because otherwise it will give you all the last child. You may not want all the last child, right, of in the entire document. You just want, in this case, just the divs of the last child or something like this. In our case, we wanted, in the previous case, only the li. So be as specific as you can in case of jQuery selectors, otherwise the performance may degrade. So here, I mean, just make, for example, the next one, which is this disabled to enabled input. Of course, I mean, no other element can be disabled or enabled, right, except buttons or inputs. In that case, don't just blindly pass something like disabled. Now the reason is when you try to do this, jQuery has to scan entire DOM or document for you, and if your document is too long, then of course you can think of performance of this. So try to be as specific as you can in jQuery selector. So be more specific and then say, okay, give me the input which is disabled. That's it. Now it's easier for jQuery, because what it will do, it will go and find out inputs first, which will be faster, and then it will find out the disabled input from that list. So that's how it is break down. And that experience or that understanding came from going through the jQuery code, because that's how they break it. And then if you are just using the pseudo selectors blindly like this, in that case it has entire penalty of going through entire document trying to select or trying to find out the first all the disabled ones. That will be too slow. You may not see the difference in your application, but still in the larger application this will be one of the reasons why your application is slow, if you are not optimizing your jQuery performance. So try to be as specific as you can in case of jQuery selector, but when it comes to CSS selector, try to be as not specific. So try to generalize everything in CSS, because whenever you change something, the browser have to render entire page again or paint entire page again, and at that time all specific selectors are applied for every change. So don't be specific in CSS, be generalized there, but here in case of jQuery selectors, try to be very specific, some bits to improve performance. Coming back again, which is not disabled, of course that's enabled, so you can use enabled as well. Then of course there is one type. Again, don't use this type just by their own, just prefix by input, because you will not have type anywhere else. So why just throw it for the entire document? Just be specific and put inputs. So input button, if you try to select, checkbox, different things you can do, and of course you will be able to see the action whatever you had defined there. So that's your type selectors, and they are again all on the form. So you can also have button selector. I think I already have here button, all these different type selectors, checkbox, blah blah blah. Focus selector. So for example, you want to change the color of only the one who is focused. Sorry, focused. So this is focused, so now focused, that is one, right? Focus. Okay, so I was right in the previous one. Spelling. Okay. The reason is when this was executed, meaning at the startup, this input didn't have focus. So we can just say something like autofocus on this to test our phone, like this, and then this will have focus automatically, and then of course was that autofocus equals to autofocus. Why it's not working? Autofocus, some weird reason. Yeah, but using that you can select the element which is currently focused, and for some reason it doesn't work here. Nope. Unsupported pseudo, of course that was focused, not focus. Maybe I may be doing something wrong. I will see into this. Anyways, and then of course enable of type is equals to file, type is equals to image, different types, of course you can do all this, and then that particular element will be selected, or that particular input will be selected. So it's very important to be specific with this type as well as this pseudo selectors. What about some content selectors? So you want to check, you want to select only those items which contain some other elements that you are trying to see here. So in this case you are trying to select all the div elements which are having a p with the class inner inside that at any level. So of course you can have this as well. It is similar to your ancestor descendant, but in a different way. So let's say you want to select a p element having an anchor tag. So you can have something like this, p, which has one more selector you can pass here, something like this. In that case, only that p is selected like this. And then if you want to put a complex selector here, you can do that in has as well. The next one is contents or contains, which is just to select all element that contains the specified text. So you can check if is also give me all the divs which are having text equals to awesome. In our example, we can have something like select all the elements which are having text equals to li. So something like this. So every, oh sorry, like this, and every li. Okay, what you are selecting here is select the element which is containing a text li. In that case, it is selecting your div element at the top, and that's why you're having everybody in the red. So what you can do here is just be specific, and then of course you can say something like there is only one UL. Do we have P? Better P. Yep. Select all the P which has some text like para, and nobody is having because it's case sensitive. So you see all different things, they will be selected, and it is just on the content selection. Next one, if you want to select the empty tags including no children, no tags, then of course you can just pass select all the divs in this example which are empty. So we can do that one as well. So let's put some of course this button tag here which is empty. So what we can do here is we can say button which is empty, but of course there is no sense of writing color red on an empty button, so we'll just change it to something else like width for some reason. So that's what the width is now, 100 pixel, and we have selected using empty. Again, some example. What else? Then of course we can select something using parent. So select all, in this example, select all the div elements with at least one child node. So they have to be parent to be returned here. So any element which is a parent, meaning it does have some element as a child, and that includes element as well as the text. So any non-empty elements will be selected there. So in our case everything is actually having some children. So yeah, that can also be used, rarely used, because we already have all other selectors. Nobody goes deep into this, and there will be a few more, I think. Okay, nothing here. What else? Then there are some other generic selectors as well, like what if you want to select all the first or all the last elements from the matching elements. So here you are not asking for the child relationship that we have asked before, like first child, last child, first child of its parent, last child of its parents. Here we are saying select all the P elements. So here in this case, let's say if you select all the P elements like this, so of course it will select all the P elements. I'm just gonna put some text here. I don't like this small button. Anyways, so coming back, so right now you are selecting all the P elements. And then of course there is no relationship. I mean, no parent. You are not asking for anything. This is one there, one here, one inside. You don't care. But from this list that was written to you, you want to just select the first one. Then use this one, or you want to just have the last one from that list that you return from, just using this. So that's how you can use this first and last selectors. And they are of course different than first child and last child, because there is no condition for being first to the parent, last to the parent. What else? Then of course you can do something like even and odd, similar way. So these are all the P's, right? You want to just select P at the even loop places. So you can have that one, or odd as well. What else? Then of course there is something called not selector, which will select all the elements not matching the given selector. So there was something with the has before, now this is not. So we are saying input, if it's not checked, then select this. And here again you can pass any other selector. So of course it can accept any other selector as well. What else? Then of course you can check the hidden elements as well. So in this example you are trying to say, okay, give me all the divs which are hidden from the UI. And how does jQuery determine something is hidden? Well, it will check for the display equals to none, or it will check if you have put width or height equal to 0. That means in both cases it will return you that element. So either you are using display equals to none on that one or not on that one. So for example, just for the case, let's hide it. What is this inner class, right? And then you want to just select the hidden ones, the div with the hidden. Of course there is none, but if you try to log this guy, you will be able to see it here. And there is this element which is hidden from the view, and you can see it's here. Div.inner, it has the inner class applied, right? Yep. So I think we have covered all of the selectors. Yep. And then, or most of the selectors that you would need. So mostly you would need just the basic ones, or just hierarchical at the max, or attribute selector. Rarely you would need something like contains or parent or has. Well, has you can, or I mean these are of course helpful for some reasons, and then these are as well. But these unique ones like this, or starting with, well, you don't want to put that much logic here. What you can specifically do, just put some ID or a class on that attribute or on that element, right? So you don't have to use the complex selectors, but it's good to know that there are available something like this. Okay, so tomorrow we will start with actions, and probably tomorrow or within next 3 hours. So yeah, we should be able to finish jQuery. We have already finished 17 slides, 17 more. Okay, let me know if you have any question. Otherwise, we can sign up from today. And then let's meet tomorrow. And again, I'm still in talk with Narain for .NET class, so probably it should be after jQuery now, which is on Wednesday and Thursday. And then we will start with Angular, finishing in 3 or 4 days, on track. Okay then, thanks everyone. Bye bye. Good night.